Thank you very much, all of you, for joining us tonight. We're very excited because we're capturing the last day of the Women's History Month. So, before I registered for this event, I went on Google and I typed the words, "the first woman," and I left it blank after that. And you'll be surprised at the thousands of results Google offered me. Well, Google is usually good, but sometimes it's just too good. So I was really surprised at the thousands of results Google offered me for so many firsts. First woman in sports, in business, in politics, in health, in sciences, in literature, in arts, just to name a few. American women's history has been full of pioneers. I think we're all superwomen. Women who fought for their rights, women who worked hard to be treated equally, women who made great strides in all possible fields. And of course, Google kept listing hundreds of trailblazing women in American history. And with a big smile on my face, I just couldn't be more proud. So obviously, there is a reason why I started that search. So the truth was, I was looking for more information about the history of the Women's History Month. And so obviously, because I'm the moderator today, I wanted to know more. How did this month become a thing? How did it start? And here's what I found out. So the first Women's History Month had its origins in 1981 when the president proclaimed the week beginning March 7th, 1982 as Women's History Week. So apparently it was just a week. And then later in 1987, March was designated as Women's History Month. So they extended it quite a bit. Since we, as the Asian Chamber, wanted to celebrate every single day of March, we scheduled our celebration, which is this event, on the last day of the month. And we are all here today to celebrate and observe the vital role of women in American history and in our community, and of course, in the Houston community. So it wasn't only a Google search. After that, I went to Google Scholar, and when I went on Google Scholar, I wanted to look for recent publications on women's roles and similar terms. But I stopped at a search term which Google Scholar offered me, which is women and minorities. That stopped me for a while, because to me, that's a weird statement, because it implied the mutual exclusivity of these populations, women and minorities. What I saw missing in that notion is that these two categories could intersect, as they do in the lives of multiple ethnic, racial minority women. Something for us to think about while we're listening to our amazing guest speakers tonight is the concept of intersectionality, which addresses the multiple layers that could compound or intersect at the micro level of individual experiences to reflect interlocking systems of either privilege or inequality. So I could be for example, in my case, I'm a woman, so that's one minority category. I'm also a Middle Eastern woman. I'm also an Arab. I'm also over 45. So this is basically the concept of intersectionality. And I don't want to overload you with information before you listen to our great speakers. I just wanted to make a note that this is a huge area to look into. And since tonight I represent both the Asian Chamber and Lone Star College, I will start with Lone Star. So Lone Star College has received recently the 2021 Diversity in Business Award from the Houston Business Journal for promoting and advancing diversity in Houston. So Lone Star College was recognized for exceptional commitment to promoting practices that advance diversity and inclusion. And like I said, because I also am a board member at the Asian Chamber of Commerce, our solidarity statement is that the Asian Chamber of Commerce will continue working to disrupt the silence around anti-Asian acts by uncovering the contexts and correcting the misconceptions. And before I turn it over to two of the most amazing professionals I have ever met, I would like to share a brief introduction about our speakers. So Dr. Dalia Wang is a professor of human resource development at Texas A&M College Station. She's also a 2020 Presidential Impact Fellow and a member at large at the Women's Faculty Network. My colleague, CARLECIA WRIGHT, is our Chief Diversity Officer at Lone Star College. She holds a BA in journalism from Columbia College in Chicago. She also holds a master's in public administration and public policy from New York University. She has certifications as diversity and inclusion certified professional from Cornell University, and unconscious bias certified trainer and facilitator from the Cultural Intelligence Institute. Isn't that awesome? Finally, to end my introduction on a high note, I would like to share a quote I read every day. And that goes as follows. There are two types of people who will tell you that you cannot make a difference in this world. Those who are afraid to try and those who are afraid you will succeed. So don't listen to them. No one can beat the person who won't give up. There's no failure except in no longer trying. So with that, I will turn it over to my amazing friend, Dr. Wang.
Thank you so much, Dalia, for the wonderful introduction. So let me share my screen. I want to make sure this time I remember to share. Can you all see my screen? Yeah? Okay, so first of all, thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity. It's such a special time and privilege to be able to share some of my stories during this special month. So I thought a lot about, I don't want to come in as a researcher, although I do women's research, right? I want to share, go into really personal, to really share a little bit about what I've learned in my past however many years, right? So I think, so I tie to within culture and beyond culture. I'm originally from China. I grew up in China. I left China when I was 21 years old. So my journey started there. So what I'd like to share, okay, my gosh, too soon. A little bit about my journey, right? So I grew up in China. My very first job took me to Uganda. Then I had my master's degree in the UK for my MBA. And then I had a chance during my MBA, went to Nigeria for a consulting project. And I did my PhD in Georgia, then first job in academia in Florida, then Texas. So I consider myself extremely blessed because I had, in my very young age, I was able to have some different culture exposures and learn some very important cultural lessons. In my 20s and 30s, I follow my mantras, which are three things: follow my heart, take risks, and be myself. I think those three principles serve me very well in the rest of my journey. So I want to very briefly go into my journey. Who am I? Who am I today? And be mindful, my identities change all the time, right? I have my amazing my son who is going to turn 20 in June. He's a musician and currently studying in Boston in Berklee College of Music. He's a violinist and he's a musician. And unexpectedly, I inherited my pandemic baby, Eli, who is actually my nephew, who was born here in San Antonio last year, but his parents were not able to come to join him. So I raised the baby, made a 40 days commitment. Now I'm still with the baby, and he just turned 1 year old on March 20th. So he's the joy of our life. Unexpected, I become a new mommy again. And here is amazing husband who's always behind me. Without him, I can't be where I am today. So I'm a mother, I'm a new mommy, I'm a wife, and here are my amazing students. I can see a couple of them actually in the audience today, and I'm a mentor, right? So in my professional job, I mentor students and I work with them on research project. This is one of the times we went to conference, present our collaborative project. And I'm also a mentor for doctoral student. One of my favorite students graduated, and I had a privilege to hoot her for her PhD degree. And I'm also an instructor, I'm a teacher. So currently those identities occupy who I am. And I'm sure as I move forward, my identity will change along the way. So what are some first lessons I've learned in my life? On the left-hand side, the handsome Air Force officer is my dad, and this is my mom. The very early on in my life, I grew up on the military base. My parents separated for 10 years, not because they don't have a good relationship, because my dad has to be stationed in different places. And growing up in China, you simply has no opportunity to move with your dad, right? So my parents lived in separate lives. That's a sacrifice to be a military spouses. The three lessons I learned very early on from my dad is never stop developing yourself. My dad is considered one of the three most talented officers in the Air Force where I grew up. The second value, values cannot be compromised. I still vividly remember when I was 10, I was sitting on my dad's lap, and he told me one day, if dad doesn't make to the general ranking, I hope you understand dad is not capable. It's because dad is not willing to give up some of the values. I was 10 years old. That lesson stuck with me until today. The third lesson I learned from my dad is really be true to yourself. You are who you are, and I don't compromise who I am. The lessons I've learned from my mom early on in my life, I've heard these four selves all the time: self-respect, self-reliance, self-confidence, self-love. My mom is one of the very few executives in HR in a very male-dominated industry, and she was the one who fight for everybody, right? Very selfless. My mom, growing up, she was my role model as a woman, as a successful career woman, a successful mother, successful wife. So my career really jump-started in Uganda. I was very lucky to work for an international construction company. It's a civil engineering company. This gentleman has a profound impact. He was a project manager, not even working for my company. I've learned so much about character and leadership. And during this time, I was in Uganda on this project for more than 2 years. There's several lessons I've learned. The number one, at a tender age of 21, I've learned politics exists regardless of your gender. And I was involving myself in this very naive political battles, which I had no idea about. And I won't elaborate now. But the second lesson I really learned is to hold on to your belief, even if it puts you at risk. I remember the day when my project manager was fired, all because of the power dynamics between two companies. It was our Chinese New Year's Eve. I bet our senior leader don't fire him on the project day, and he was fired on that day. I remember everybody, 600 people celebrating cafeteria. He was standing in there, hiding himself in his office. I was there with him. And that taking the position had the consequences on me, but I never regret it because our relationship has become forever relationship. And that's something I've learned very early on. The third thing, sadly, what I've learned is women don't always support women, which is very sad. And I saw, because of my position, being able to work with the manager, I received a lot of personal attack and jealousy from other girls who feel like I don't deserve the position. And sometimes it's simply because we have different jobs, right? And that's a very difficult lesson for me to swallow. And finally, I had a choice. Remember, I said I follow my heart. I always believe I have to go work in a place where my values are aligned with the organizational values. When I came back to China, I decided I'm going to quit my job because I didn't like the politics. I didn't like how they treated the manager who I supported, and I quit my job. I really accepted my parents very much. You know, in Chinese culture, you listen to your parents. And I decided, no, I can't work in an environment where I disagree with the values. So I have a choice to leave. I don't have to stay, right, to be miserable. Moving forward, and several years later, I went back to Africa. And several years later, I decided my African experience really cultivated my interest in organization management. I worked for a company who had a well-established reputation in Africa, yet we're so behind, 9 months behind the contract. The World Bank was the founder. They took away from us. So my interest took me to UK to study MBA. Particularly, I was very interested in organization management. And here's my graduation picture. What I've learned in that experience, we have 50 people coming from 29 different countries, lots of cultural diversity, and lots of teamwork. And I've learned one big lesson: cultural diversity intensifies conflicts. It doesn't matter which country you come from. It doesn't matter if you're a woman or a man. It doesn't matter, right? So the second lesson I've learned, gender or power matter. I vividly remember I was working on a project team, and the team leader was Ugandan man. And I thought I had a special bonding because I worked in Uganda for over 2 years. And it turned out to be, I was working in a team where predominantly people are from Asian cultures. And I spoke up during the team meeting. I challenged some of his ideas, and I was punished. And I was excluded later on. He came to my door, knocked on the door, 9 o'clock in the morning, said, "We don't welcome you. We don't want you to be in our team." That was a very difficult experience for me as well. And I realized, this is my third lesson. Assertive women are not always welcome, right? Just being assertive, share my opinions, and I was punished for that. And during that time, I had a chance to go back to Africa, and I went back to Nigeria this time because I had a connection to work on the restructuring project, where I learned several important lessons. And the number one lesson I learned in a very painful way is to respect the local culture. The company brought in a team of international experts, right? Each one of us is responsible for one aspect of the organization. I was looking at human resource side of the organization. What we've done is to come in as experts without even knowing the culture. We are changing everything. And I remember one morning I was typing on my computer, developing the training plans for the truck drivers. The manager called me, who is actually, by the way, Canadian, called me, said, "Ja, I'm fired." I said, "By whom?" "By the owner." "When?" "Now." "Where?" "On the phone." That experience, and I left Africa feeling, wow, people are stupid. They don't understand management. No wonder they're failing, right? They've suffered financial failing for several years. That's why they brought in international team. I left with that idea. They don't understand. Several years later, when I think about this project, I realized we intruded into the culture, a family-based culture, never took our time understanding who they are. People are people, right? So there is an aspect about us taking time to know the culture and understand the power dynamics. Ultimately, the painful lesson I've learned is through my practitioner experience. It's really about, who's making the final decision, who's having the power to say, you stay, you left, right? We are very naive, we're ambitious, we're operating in a Western mindset, say, hey, I'm coming here, gave you everything you don't understand. That didn't work. And another lesson I learned about me is everything is possible. Here's me riding horse every day along the beach in Nigeria, Lagos. I never imagined I could be touching any animal. I was pushed by my friend. I'm thinking, wow, there's so many things I could do. I simply didn't imagine I could do that. That experience gave me a lot of confidence in, John, you can do a lot of things as long as you're open your mind. And the final lesson is I've learned to work within limits. That project failed, and my MBA project didn't fail, right? I didn't get what I wanted to have. I was going to implement the data. I was going to launch the program for training. I couldn't get to do that because the manager was fired, but I still managed to use the data, produce the decent quality thesis, and I graduated with my MBA. So I've learned sometimes life is not ideal. You gotta work with what you have. You can still make it. So the next stage in my life, I came to UGA. Let me see. And critical lesson I've learned, I've pursued my doctoral degree in University of Georgia. and Athens, Georgia. And this man is very important in my life. His name is Tom Games. Dr. Tom Games at that time was the director of Georgia Center for Continuing Education. And he was the third leader of the center. And within 2 years, they cut down 300 people. It was a massive layoff. And I was one of the few graduate assistants working there. And here's a little background. What was the first lesson I've learned? I started as an intern working in the human resource department. And very soon I realized there is a senior woman, there's a junior woman. The junior woman was my manager, eventually quit the job. The senior woman didn't like me simply because I was working for the junior and she didn't feel she was respected. That was the second time I feel, wow, women don't always support women. I was much, much younger, yet still I was given all kinds of part-time possibilities you can. And when we go through this budget cut, the center decided nobody, we're not gonna hire any graduate students anymore. And I was devastated because I need financial support to finish my PhD. And guess what? I said, you know what? Something I've never learned as a Chinese is to ask people for help, which is extremely difficult, right, in our culture. And I told myself, you know what? I can't ask for myself. And I went to the center director. My hands were trembling. And I said, Dr. Games, I have a request. I interviewed him prior to that for group projects. So I knew him as an interviewee. He was sitting there listening to me very quietly. And I talk about my hardship. By the way, I rehearsed those many times before I met him. After that, he didn't say a single word. He said, that's it? I said, what do you need? I said, I need graduate assistantship. He said, here you go. That's it. So for the next 2 years, I was the only graduate assistant in the whole center. And my boss' attitude towards me changed. The first question she asked me is, what did you do with Dr. Games to give you a job? I said, I just simply asked. That was the big lesson for me. Learn to ask questions. The worst case scenario is you get to say, here a no, but that's okay. Okay, so when I graduated 2004, my first job led me to Florida. Barry University is a private Catholic school. That was my transition from corporate world to the academe. So several lessons I've learned. I was 32, number one. I was an Asian girl, and I was supervising a group of pretty much homogeneous population, predominantly by white people. I remember the first day I walked into my class was the organizational change. Everybody, there's one senior man, he's right here. Bob Rayner, later become a very good friend. He was a senior executive in corporation. Everybody worshiped him, right? He said, who are you? Who are you? Where do you come from? What credential do you have? I felt like I was given a job interview. Everybody was angry because my predecessor was a very well-known trainer in the country who was fired. So when I look at me, a Chinese woman that young, who do you have for us? And I spent the next 3 hours just talking about who I am. And I'm telling myself, giving up, walking out of here is not an option. And the lesson is, I'm going to show you what I can give you, and she couldn't give you. And it was a difficult time for me as a Chinese, but I managed to do so because it was my first job. I told them we're in the same boat. You need me to get your PhD, and I need this job as my very first job. So I was upfront, I was honest, I was very authentic. 2 weeks later, Bob Rayner called me in my office, said, Ja, you are so honest, you won our hearts. And we become a family. I led a group of 34 doctoral students. I stayed there for 3 years, and graduated 10 of them. So many of them are still friends to me. We're like a big family. So going forward, I'm sorry, I keep moving back and forth with my cursors. Bear with me. Okay, so from within to beyond. So what did I learn? As a Chinese woman, I feel like I'm constantly struggling with my identity and my Chinese. My mentor's famous question is always, Ja, am I talking to a Chinese Ja or an American Ja? I say, this moment, absolutely Chinese Ja. There are many moments I see my heritage, my cultural beliefs come into play. And there are moments I see myself as non-Chinese, right? So it's that constant dynamics I experience that make me wonder who I am and make me want to know who I am. So here are the few things where I bring as part of my baggage. I come from a culture where power, authority are everything. I always tell my parents how lucky I am to be able to be an instructor, teacher in this culture. because I can tell my students, I don't know, but nobody will blame me. In China, I have to know everything. That's a tremendous culture, tremendous pressure, right? Being a teacher in China, you are the knowledge provider, you know everything. And coming from the Chinese culture, we don't do conflicts, right? We don't talk to people, I'm upset, this is not right, I'm hurt by you. We avoid conflicts, right? We're looking for harmonious relationship. We want everybody to be happy, whether you're truly happy or not. We don't want to talk about it. And I come from a culture where relationship is everything, right? If we are friends, you have everything. We don't talk about performance. You can be the worst performer, but if you're my friend, you still get promoted. I see that happening all the time, right? And I'm telling myself, I'm glad I'm not living in China, right? Because I will be, my sister's words, I would have been fired 10 times by her boss, right? Just being who I am. And then finally, I come from a culture where it's all about us, not about me. We sacrifice ourselves for the group benefits, right? So I remember the 2 years I was the program chair, my American colleagues say, Ja, can you be less about we, and a little bit more about me, you. That's something I'm still struggling, right? Not just as a woman, but as a Chinese woman, we sacrifice, right? That's our upbringing. Then I want to move beyond. I'm challenging myself on a daily basis. Outside of my culture, what else can I be? What else do I cherish? Here are the 4 things I realize I absolutely cannot compromise. The first one is authenticity. As you can see from my upbringing, that comes from my parents. It's my family value. I have to be true to myself. Even that means I'm going to put myself in a risky situation. I have to be honest with myself. The second piece I've learned from my different experiences, ups and downs in my professional life is you gotta have the grit, the tenacity, right? You don't give up. And a long time ago, I had a conversation with my colleague. He said, Ja, I'm surprised you didn't do drugs. I'm surprised you didn't turn into alcohol. I said, why? I share a lot of my upbringing. She's given the environment you brought up, you should be a drug addict. I think, yeah, you're right. But it's part of being resilient. And we didn't know. That comes from your culture, comes from your family upbringing. And that tenacity keep me to be where I am, right? To be able to battle many challenges I've encountered, not just as Chinese, but also as a woman. And the third piece I could absolutely not compromise is this integrity, right? And I have a strong sense of right or wrong. I think that was instilled by my parents early on in my life, but also it takes courage to say, this is not right. And I think you don't know I'm an incivility researcher. I study workplace incivility. And I am challenged by myself on a daily basis to ask myself a question, John, if you see something that's not right, are you willing to speak up? Do you dare to speak up? What's the consequence if you do so? And I tell myself, if I don't do that, I will never be able to move on, right? So that's integrity, have a high sense of right or wrong. It's very important to me. And on that last piece, I've learned by watching the leaders, by being just who I am, is that at what point you're going to hold yourself accountable. It's okay to say, I'm a woman. I don't want to victimize myself just because I'm a woman. I don't want to victimize myself just because I'm minority in always dominant culture, right? Everywhere I lived in my life, I was always a minority. I was always one of the few, right? And I think early on, if you asked me 20 years ago, I'm walking into a room, I'm looking for a familiar face, another Asian face. I got incredibly uncomfortable if I didn't see an Asian face. And today I say, you know what, Zhao, own up. You can come, you can reach out, you can introduce yourself, you can own the culture component, you can just reach out, you can challenge yourself. That accountability, not accountable for other people to do things, but hold myself accountable, not sometimes, but all the times, meaning challenge yourself all the time. Finally, I just want to quickly share what have I taken away from my cultural stories, from my life, from my upbringing, from my family, from my interactions with many people in different culture. Number one, as a woman, as a matter of fact, just in January, I finished a chapter on women's development in China, and where I studied the legislation and legal environment for women. And I realized how far we have come as women in our movement, yet how far we still have to travel to reach this true equality, right? So gender stereotypes will always be there. It's a constant thing for us. It's part of life. So I embrace that part of as my life, not an excuse. The second piece I want to share is have courage. Have courage in your life and have courage to make your voice heard. Have courage to make yourself present. I think as women and sometimes as minority, right? In the room, we are conscious, I'm the only woman, one of the few women there. So I don't want to speak up. I think about how men think about me, or do I have accent? And have that courage to just be you. If you don't speak up, trust me, nobody will speak up for you. Or there are some people, but very rarely, right? So have that courageous moment and just to be you. The third thing is I tell my students, some of my students will know, stop using culture as excuse. And I hear many people, I work in a very diverse environment. I will hear people say, oh, this so-and-so is late, that's because of the culture, or the culture is always late. And so-and-so doesn't talk to you, doesn't deal with conflict because culturally we don't deal with conflict. But you know what? We're no longer living in a one culture environment. We're living in a multicultural environment. So do not use your culture as excuse. If I can't do conflict, I'm working with people coming from culture. Conflict is acceptable, and work on myself. Have the courage, maybe practice at home, but do not say, just because this is who I am, I'm not going to deal with that, right? Challenge yourself. And the next thing I call that prioritize your identity. As I shared early on, currently I have 5 primary identities, but in every season of my life, my priority was very different. Before I had a son, everything I care about is how to become successful professional. Then when I had a child, I realized, you know what? I want to be a mom to be there for my son. I want to be every event he was. I want to remember mom to be here every single moment, right? So my priority changed all the time, and it's okay. I think the key is to know your identity, what really matters to you at that time of your life. The next lesson I learned is I am who I am. And you have to know who you are. And that me is changing all the time, right? 10 years ago, I was very different. I was more timid. And 10 years later, I'm more bold and more courageous. I'm evolving. I'm embracing this involvement. So I am who I am. I want to be true to myself. I don't want to go to work wearing the mask to say, hey, I can't cry. If I want to cry, I cry, right? That's just who I am. And this is a lesson I heard Dalia mention, we're superwoman. I have been thinking I'm a superwoman for years. And I wanted to, that was one of my goals until recently I said, I don't want to be a superwoman. Well, I recognize I can be. With this pandemic, I've thought a lot. With this baby unexpectedly coming into my life in my 40s, late 40s, I realized, you know what, there are many moments. I need a little bit more sleep. I need to cry. The first day I was on Zoom teaching last fall, I was crying so like crazy. I never realized I could be that stressed out. I was worried about not able to using Zoom. My little baby, 6 months old, was crying in the background. My son was at home, just had a surgery, mouth surgery. My husband is in bed having a tender back. That was the moment I'm thinking, Ja, you are a superwoman. You can do everything. And is that okay to say, I don't want to? And I think that's expectation, right? Everybody says, you're a superwoman. I say, no, allow me once for all. I don't have to be a superwoman. And that's the permission I'm trying to give myself now. And then finally, my biggest lesson is really for all of us women, we need to support women. And it's sadly, in my growing up, I see so many jealousies. When I'm better, people will make up a story. Oh, you got this job because you're pretty. You got this job because you have a good relationship with your boss. I was angry because I was young. And that didn't go away, right? Today, I also hear women say, oh, wow, I earned this position in a very hard way. So you have to earn your way up in a very hard way. Why can't we help each other? Women don't help each other, right? So I would really urge all of us to share what we've learned and give people a shortcut, help them to have an easy way compared to ourselves. So I think I want to stop here a little bit about my story. It's really not about just who I am. I think it's not just about who I am. And there are a lot of lessons I've learned as a woman who live in a culture where I'm always a minority. So what are some of the lessons I've learned? So thank you so much for letting me to share my story in a very quick and snapshot way. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Dalia, am I up now?
Yes.
Oh, good. Well, thank you, Dalia. I want to thank you, and I want to thank Paul and the Asian Chamber of Commerce for inviting me to participate in your Women's History Month event. I think that, before I go into sharing my background, I really want to acknowledge that, like so many of you, I was horrified by the attacks that took place in Atlanta 2 weeks ago today. My deepest condolences go out to the family and loved ones of those 8 individuals that were murdered, as well as the Asian American and Pacific Islander community that was terrorized. I recognize that since the start of COVID-19, there have been a dramatic increase in hate crimes against Asian America to the extent of more than 800%. It's unfortunate that amid a deadly pandemic, some of the ugliest truths of our society have surfaced over these past 12 months, further exacerbating an already uncertain and fearful time for so many. As a society, we're doing such a good job of priding ourselves on diversity and talking about how it's one of America's greatest assets. I've grown personally to understand in my lifetime that it's not enough to celebrate diversity for its richness and beauty that it brings to our community, but we must also acknowledge that for many, diversity comes with a high price of inequities, exclusion, and suffering. Just as was the case after the killings of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery, we as a community must come face to face with racism. And in order for us to genuinely comfort those around us that are adversely impacted, it's important to confront the truth that for many people of color, they don't feel safe, heard, or even seen. Once we acknowledge these situations for what they are, we can effectively combat hate, injustice, and violence. I want to thank you again I know that when we scheduled this event, the unfortunate situation had not yet happened, but I think it's important for me to really make sure that the Chamber and our Asian American community in Houston and this country in general know that I am an ally to the community. So who am I? Dalia introduced me. I'm CARLECIA WRIGHT. Currently, professionally, I serve as a Chief Diversity Officer for Lone Star College. I've been in the role just a little over 30 days. And so I've been running, just really trying to understand Lone Star, as Dalia has shared, just was acknowledged before my appointment, or right around the time of my appointment, for its diversity contributions here in Houston. But Lone Star is, for those of you that are not familiar with Lone Star College is the largest community college, or the largest college system in Houston, serving over 85,000 students through 7 campuses and various centers. We're a minority serving institution with having nearly 70% of our students representing Hispanic, Black, and Asian minorities. And so it's just such an honor to lead Lone Star in their diversity efforts. While I am the first Chief Diversity Officer to come to Lone Star has been doing this work for quite some time throughout its campuses. And so I'm proud to be a part of the Lone Star family. But I guess I'll, similar to what Gia shared, and I really appreciate you sharing your story and sharing your experience, both from a personal perspective, a professional perspective, but who you are and what you value and what you stand for. I think that I will certainly take those lessons that you shared with us to heart, Gia. But you've reminded me of just my own, I guess, humble beginnings. Like you, I have a variety of identities. I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm Black, I'm a woman. And so, and in many instances, I've been the youngest leader or the only female leader. And so, I too recognize that there are multiple identities. When I start to think about just this conversation around my context as a woman. You know, I have to be honest with you, and it's something that I was thinking about as I was preparing for our conversation and our dialogue today. I don't know if I realized the adversities of being a woman until I hit management. And what I mean by that, it seems to me that earlier in my career, I didn't face as many challenges of being a woman as I did as being African American, or at least so I thought. You know, I think in hindsight, it could have been a combination of both, being both a woman and Black. But I don't think I started to really recognize, you know, the distinction professionally or the challenges or obstacles really until my late 20s, when I first started to lead an area for the city of New York. In that experience, I was working for a housing department, the New York City Housing Preservation and Development Department. And I was appointed to be a director of operations. And so in addition to being a woman leader, I was also under 30 leader, leading a team of more than 160 individuals as a director of operations, managing oftentimes individuals that were 20 to 30 years older than me professionally. And so what I learned early in my professional leadership experience, when I faced obstacles and was so strong I didn't want to cry at work, when I was faced with challenges or confronted by circumstances, was that you really have to be confident, right? You have to not shrink when you come up against challenges or obstacles or you're confronted. Really be confident about why you're there, the contributions you make as a professional. You have to understand your purpose. And what I mean by understand your purpose is I'm truly, truly committed. You know, I got into professionally, I got into work that was really about equity, driving equity for marginalized and disadvantaged individuals. Working at that housing department, I was very intentional. And for the rest of my career, to this day, very intentional about driving equity for the most marginalized populations. And so I knew how committed I was to creating affordable housing opportunities to New Yorkers at that time. And so just understanding your purpose and lean into your purpose. And I think that some of those obstacles that stand in your way, you can push back. Speak up. You know, it's so hard to do sometimes for us as women, or, you know, the good thing for me, as I share it with you, I didn't know I didn't know that I had disadvantages of being a woman or being shut down so early in my career. So I spoke up, and, I got shut down many times, but it was my naivety that said, you know what, there's something there and I've got to push past that. The other thing that I would encourage women that I learned being a leader is build alliances. Build alliances, not just with men, right? So we always talk about, be an ally, and we're looking for men as allies. And I truly appreciate the allyship of men. It's important to build those alliances, but it's so much more important for us to build alliances with each other. And that means, doesn't matter the rank of a woman within an organization, from the person who is cleaning to the person who's the administrative person, every single person, make sure that you're being an ally to those women and you're advocating for things that support everyone, not just because you've risen to the top of leadership. I'll give an example, things that folks might take for granted. I remember, in my earlier leadership experience, that one of my not direct staff members, but someone that reported, I was meeting with her, checking in. I don't know, I think it was like a birthday cupcake celebration. And I just said, how are you? And she shared with me that, she had just had a baby, and she was so frustrated because she couldn't breastfeed. And she said that it wasn't that the accommodations were, that there weren't accommodations, but it was the bare minimum of accommodations. It was a dirty, filthy place. And so it was years before I could, I would take on the role of motherhood, but that broke my heart that someone could not contribute to their family in the way they wanted to, and to do that. And those are the types of alliances, that's the type of speaking up you have to do. The other thing, and we hear all the time, and I know, it's fitting as we think about Women's History Month, is we've got to ask for what we want. And we might not necessarily get it the first time, but we ought to ask a second time, and just never give up in asking. And at some point in your career, look for an opportunity where you just won't compromise. The other thing is to stand in your power. Really understand the contributions that you make as a woman, the uniqueness, the diversity, the elements that you bring as a woman to any partnership, relationship, business, professional development opportunities. And then keep setting new standards. Dalia talked about how she did her Google search and she was looking for first. I think that every day, women are creating new standards and defying the odds. Keep doing that, right? Keep surpassing their expectations. And so those are some of, I guess, the lessons that I want to share just from the perspective of being a woman. I've been, I've had the privilege of being with some really, working with some amazing women and amazing men allies, and working with some amazing community members and leaders that have advocated for the true sense of equity. And so I'm so honored again to be a part of this conversation. I know, Dalia, that you wanted to ask us some questions, and so I'm going to pause there.
Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And so I have 3 questions before we open up the floor for more questions. So please feel free to unmute yourselves if you have questions that you want to ask our amazing speakers. So the first question I have is gender parity achieved yet? And I'll start. I don't know where to start. Who wants to take the first step?
I'll just say, I think that we both alluded to that. I think it was March 24th was Equity Pay Day, where women were making 82 cents on the dollar of every man, and that was just for women in general on average. The numbers are different for Asian women. I think that March 9th was Asian Women Equity Day. I think it won't be into the end of April for Black women, and even further out for Latinx women. And so the answer simply is no. And so that's why we have to keep asking, keep advocating, and also, take it on, even if it's not necessarily our fight as individuals, as leaders within our organizations, whether we're a leader by truly having management responsibilities, or we're a leader through our influence.
I just want to add a little bit. Last fall, I was listening to a podcast from, it's actually a research piece from Harvard Business Review, right? It talked about how long would that take for women to achieve true parity with men. It's going to take another 200 years, right? So at least, I think it sounds very depressing. And I think
I read 50 somewhere, so I read 50 years somewhere, not 200.
I think the thing is really we all know women have to speak up, right? So we have to fight for our own rights. A lot of times we are thinking of other people. I think that's part of who we are. We're nurturing, we're self-sacrificing, right? We always think, oh, it's okay. And I have a tremendous hard time to talk about money. I don't remember even, let's just use in a financial as example. I remember when I was hired for the job, the department has said, what is your salary expectations? Oh, no, I can't. Part of me is being Chinese, right? We don't talk about money. And part of me being woman is, who's going to ask about money? I said, no, I don't have expectation. He said, no, tell me. I said, no, I don't. And I never set expectation. So whatever he offered, I said, yeah, I got it. So years later, when I went for promotion, they said, that's the only chance you can fight for a salary. I think, I can't do that, right? And I did. I gathered all my strengths and I did my research. I'm thinking, yeah, you're right. We're not paid equally. Guess what? Did that make a big difference? No. But at least I say, hey, John, I'm proud. I at least try, right? It's very difficult. I think just part of who we are as women, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And so the second question I have is, how do you navigate the different identities? So all three of us talked about intersectionality, and how we have so many different identities, and we're not only members of one minority group, but multiple. And so we have different cultural values that may sometimes appear or look to be opposing or opposite. How do you reconcile that while you're making sure you're not losing your original identity, you're not losing yourself in that battle?
Okay, I'll take a first shot. I think a couple of things about me. I'm always reflective. Even when I was very young, I have the habit of writing diaries. With my baby, I've been writing to Eli this is my fourth book I'm writing for Eli, so one day he can read my diary about him. I think part of that, the first starting point is really know yourself. I think life is so busy, right? The words we hear all the time is, I'm so busy, I don't have time to even think about who I am. What do I really want in life, right? So we just go on like autopilot every day. And also what didn't help us as women is we're expected to do so many things, right? Early on when I was married, I told my husband, when he came home, he's exhausted. He's lying there, oh my gosh, I worked for a whole day. I can't do anything else. I say, me too. I've just worked as long as you are now. Here I am expected to cook dinners, taking care of the children, right? Why can't you do something like that? Oh, you're tired. So I think there are a lot of things we grew up with, those identities that, hey, I can do everything. I'm a woman. I'm unselfish. We don't have to. And it's a very hard thing for me to learn because I'm also a perfectionist. But I learned, you know what? At what sacrifice? At what sacrifice you? And the part of we didn't learn, actually, my mom told me 4 things for self. I've done very well with the first 3. And the last one I didn't do well is love myself, right? We tend to let ourselves go. Everybody else is more important than us. I think, thank goodness, the pandemic helped us to understand, hey, you're the most important thing. If you are not healthy, you can't even take care of other people. I think that identity for me is a constant. I'm always aware. And what's most important for me now? There is a book I would recommend to everybody to read. It's called Essentialism by Greg McKeown. I read that book 3 years ago in my career where I said yes to everything. I've never learned to say no. Part of that is being a woman. Part of that is just who I am. Everybody asked me, say yes, yes, yes. At a point I was burned out. I'm thinking, I have to say no, but I can't. That book became my Bible. I read it twice throughout taking notes. And during the process of reading the book, I set big notes to several very big dreamed goals I had. And I realized at every given time, this time, my identity is a young mommy. Whether I'm a young mommy, older mommy, I have a young baby. I need to give him energy. So it's okay to give my permission to say, yeah, it's okay. If you're not doing anything 100%, 90% is okay, right? So I think I'm still in the process of learning, but it's that self-awareness, constantly ask yourself, what truly matters to you in your life, not just in career life, also in your personal life. That helped me to prioritize what is the priority right now, for me.
No, I'm listening to Gia share, and I have some of the same sentiments. I do think that really understanding, well, one, I will say that I've not always not been able to lose myself, right? So I want to be honest and transparent about that. I think that there have been times where I have really, lost my identity to conform to whatever the expectation was. I experienced it when I first became a wife. I experienced it as a, as a mother, of what I thought was expected of me, as a professional woman, as a mother in the workplace. And in some instances, I don't know that I made some of the right choices. And that's not to say that I regret. I think that one of the things that I've come to recognize, definitely during this pandemic, is the importance of identifying wins every day. I can't be perfect at everything, but also part of my happiness is being myself. And so professionally pursuing an opportunity where I could show up every day as myself was really important to me. When it came to balancing everything that we have to do as strong, powerful professional women leading teams and classrooms and mentoring folks and, serving as an example to folks. Some things you just have to let go. And I talk to, and I let those things go, and I either outsource them just to make life easier. And that's how I deal with balance. But the identity thing, I think that the older I've gotten, the more important it has been for me to really just, be honest, and not everyone's going to like me. Not everyone is going to be pleased with the response. I'm doing this work, around diversity, equity, and inclusion. I've got to have tough conversations. And so I got to make folks feel uncomfortable because, as I said, in order to truly facilitate healing, we have to confront some of those things. And so, I'm comfortable with that now professionally, but here I am 25 years later, right? So it took a long while to get here.
Well, thank you so much. I want to be mindful to everyone's time, but I think we have 1 minute. Maybe we can take one question from the audience.
Hello, my name's Fei Lee, and this question can go to either one, Ms. Wright or Dr. Wong. I wanted to know how you navigate through a world where, and I just saw the Prime video on Gloria Steinem. I don't know if you all have seen that on Prime, but it's excellent. And one of the things that occurred in the 1960s when she was in the world of journalism was a lot of sexual harassment with women. How do you navigate when the majority of the executive level positions are men, but yet you want to protect yourself from those types of situations? And I also say it, I'm an Asian woman. Unfortunately, Asian women are a bit hypersexualized because of our history in this country. And I don't feel comfortable being alone with a man, in other words, especially at the executive level.
Go ahead.
Oh,
Please.
I will say to you, Ms. Lee, that, organizations have evolved and changed. I mean, even, I feel like I've been in the workforce a little over 20 years. I've been in similar situations professionally, and it's really a hard place to be. And so I will say that I've 20 years ago, or I think my experience was closer to 15 years ago, I was in a situation where I felt similar. And I think that you have to identify, not all executive men are, not all of them are bad, and maybe the great majority is not. You either have to leverage the resources that your organization has, or you have to find someone that you can trust, that you can share your discomfort or any circumstances or situations. Otherwise, it can perpetuate for other women in your organization. And I think that, when I think 15 years later, what I didn't do or what I didn't say. It's one of the biggest regrets that I have in my professional experience as a woman and as a leader.
I thank you. So I just want to add, Faye, I just want to add one more thing you may not like to hear. I think we all have choices, right? And I think in my personal career, whether I was taking impulse, my parents always say, "Ja, you're acting on impulse." I say, no, that's called courage, right? I have to work in an environment where I feel true respect, right? So if you are in an environment where you feel you have three choices, you can say, okay, find the allyship who are on board in that level can truly understand respect and be the advocate for you, right? If you cannot find that person or people, you have another choice is what level I can compromise? What is my boundary? I always ask myself, what is the boundary I can absolutely not cross and will make me feel uncomfortable or do not respect myself, right? So what is that boundary? If you feel I'm crossing my boundary, then that's a different issue. And a third choice, which is not an easy choice, is you can always choose to leave, right? I did that with my first job because at a young age, I did not like what I saw. It was very ugly. I know politics everywhere, but I also told myself, I don't have to be part of it. Maybe I'm too idealistic, but there are places you value more. And every place we go, there are politics. There are things we don't like, but there are things I absolutely cannot compromise. Sexual harassment is one of them. Right? If that's the environment I have to go to, I feel so uncomfortable. I need to look for another places, perhaps lower pay, right? Lower pay or more work. So I think goes back to what exactly you're looking for in life and where do you draw that comfort level? When you reach that comfort level, what is the consequence on yourself? And that's insight I would like to share because I told myself the last thing I would do in my life is compromise. I grew up in China. You know the population in China. My sister constantly complained about her job. She's in a very nice company with very good pay, but she went through the difficult time watching women getting promoted because of they have a good relationship with executive. And I'm just going to be very bold here. One summer I went back home. My sister said, one of executives really just liked her, say, okay, here's my hotel number, come here. She's not coming. That's why for the next 5 years, she saw everybody else got promoted, not her. And she's one of the top performers of the company for years. That's the choices she had to make. Consequence she take is not getting promotion. And I've been asking her, sis, why don't you leave? You know, John, the moment you leave, there are 1,000 people waiting for this position. I need a job, right? I need a job. I need a decent income, but I'm not willing to sacrifice myself. So what am I sacrificing is my promotion opportunity. I think it's very sad, right? Because we all make choices in life. Each choice has a consequence. So I would encourage you to think about, am I crossing the boundary? Am I feeling miserable? So what is the trigger for me to make decision which may be difficult or different?
Thank you.
Thank you so much for our amazing speakers, and thank you so much for people who tuned in today to listen to them and listen to us talk about this important topic. And one last thing to end on another high note is do not undermine the power of mentors. So most of all the amazing ladies with us tonight, they may or may not believe in the power of mentors, but you do need mentors, and not only one, but you need at least 5. One who encourages you all the way, one who discourages you all the way, one who knows a lot about where you are right now, and one who knows a lot about where you aspire to be in the future, and finally one who can always hold your hands and take you wherever you want to go. And plus those 5 mentors, you need a sponsor, someone who speaks up and rightfully advocates for you, because your mentors will teach you things, but your sponsors should be the ones who reach out and talk about you, speak highly of you, and this is where you get your next opportunity. Again, thank you very much. I really want to be very mindful of your time. We're already 6 minutes past our time. So just wanted to let you know we have another great event tomorrow. It's a cybersecurity event where we are hosting an FBI agent to talk about cybersecurity. So be on the lookout for this one, and please join us. Thank you so much and have an amazing night.
Thank you for inviting me, Dalia.
Thank you.
I've learned a lot from you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.